Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
No, but we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. Hi, welcome to The Connected Life. I am so excited. Today I'm here with my favorite human.
Oh, that's me?
Yeah.
Okay, Justin.
Yeah, that's him. And we're sharing a mic today, which is unusual.
We are, because we're down in San Diego and we're having so much fun hanging out with two of our favorite people.
Yes, Bryant and Marcus.
What's up?
A little bit. I was second on that, but it's fine.
Well, I think Bryant and Marcus is flowier than Marcus and Bryant.
Maybe.
I think I just went in order of who. And we're doing a podcast. A couple of weeks ago, we did a podcast on ADHD, and we had so many people respond to that. And it was me and one of my girlfriends, and I had a lot of people ask, is ADHD different with men? And we'd like to hear how it is for their world. And it just so happens that I like to collect ADHD friends so that I feel normal. Marcus, Bryant.
Wow. See, it didn't flow off the tongue as nice, you know? Bryant, Marcus.
Didn't even catch it. But I liked it.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I've now given such an intro. Should we share your story?
Yeah, you want me to talk about the story?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't see what this has to do with the podcast. But I was explaining to Abby some of like my triggers around Adventure Challenge, the company.
Yeah.
And I was telling her the story that happened because it's easy to be misunderstood as leaders.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's like, and I feel like I've had a lot more empathy and compassion for leaders the more I've grown in leadership, because you realize you do something with a good heart trying to create something that's fun.
Oh my gosh.
And then it gets twisted, and then the rumors down the road create you into this horrible monster.
Yes.
And so I was telling her an example of a story was when my company, the Adventure Challenge, is smaller, maybe like 30, 40 employees. I randomly bought 2 paintball guns and all these paintballs.
Yeah.
And it was like late at night. And so I started a group chat with all these people that were my friends.
Yeah.
They were also my employees. But all of my friends at one point were my employees. And
Yeah, that's how you hire when you start a young business.
Exactly.
You just gather everyone
that you know that does something. And so, and then in a small startup, everyone's friends because it's kind of a more family dynamic.
Yes.
And so basically I texted like 12 of my employees and friends and was like, hey, let's play a game called Manhunt, where 2 people are hunting everybody in this field of paintball guns and everyone else has to go hide. If you get shot, you're dead. Sounds like a blast, right? So I was like, let's go do this. And so all these people like, yeah, let's go play Manhunt. So we gather all these people. We show up to this big field. It's pitch black outside. And I'm like, okay, I want one of the guns first because I bought this. And then my friend Marin was like, I'll take the other gun. And so we were about to start, but then my business partner, Ben, shows up. And he was like, what are you guys playing? And I was like, we're playing Manhunt. We're going to go hunt you guys. So go freaking hide. And he's like, I don't want to go get shot. I want one of the guns too. And so he convinced Marin to give him the gun and for Marin to go hide, because Marin's like, whatever, I'll go hide. This is fun. So then me and Ben go out and we go hunt everybody and we shoot everybody and we're having a good time. And one employee specifically, you know, if you like surprise someone, you can say, hey, surrender, and they can put their hands up and it's over.
Yeah.
This chick had a lot of pride. And I jumped around a corner and was like, Mary, put your hands up. And she goes, no. And she turns around to run and I just light her up.
Oh.
Granted, I could have just shot her once or twice, but I'm far enough away. I'm thinking one of these will hit her.
Yeah.
They all hit her.
Oh no.
So it just like sprays up her leg, up her side, and even her neck.
Ugh.
And it hit her hand too. So she's, you know, just, and she's like, I'm out, whatever, we're done. Yeah. I thought it was fun, but then it got really windy, so we had to wrap up and go. So we only played one round. Instead of doing more rounds, it was just me and Ben hunting our employees with paintball guns. And so that's the rumor it started a rumor, because basically Mary shows up at the office and she's like covered in welts because, you know, she's got sprayed by a paintball gun. She's like, yeah. So the narrative that got spread was, you know, Brian, Ben, like hire their employees to go hide and they go hunt them and shoot them to like get their aggression out. And it was the most, I was like freaking out when this happened, because I'm like, that's not what happened. It was supposed to be other people shooting and it just wound up being me and Ben shooting. And it was a horrible, and I tell Abby that story and she thought it was really funny. It's still traumatizing to me. Think back on it.
I feel a lot of empathy for it because that is what leadership is.
Yeah.
It's just
Shooting people.
What'd you say?
Shooting
Hiring your friends and shooting them in the face.
Leadership is manhunting.
Yeah. No, I just I thought that was one of the funniest stories of a misperception where I'm like, I would have loved to hear those rumors. Like, I work for the Adventure Challenge where the bosses hunt you.
Yep, exactly. It was great. Yeah.
What I love is that the whole point of this, ultimately, this story is that there is no point in what we're doing. And this is what ADHD is like in every moment with friends who have ADHD.
Yeah, we invited Justin here to be the one person to say what it's like.
And then they didn't even give me a mic. So I'm sitting over here having to steal a mic.
Yeah, it's very true. Okay, well let's start with you, Marcus. When did you learn you had ADHD? And what has that journey been like in your life?
Yeah, I would have said a lot of my life I knew I had extra energy. It was a lot harder to focus. School felt harder. I was always the kid who got in trouble a lot, not because I was bad, but because I had so much energy I couldn't sit all day. And teachers struggled because I was really smart. So I'd get really good grades, but I was often distracting the whole class.
That is also my experience of you. Marcus was in a group I led of about 60 students, and he was always distracting the entire room.
Legit, there was a part, and this is where Abby could see where I couldn't see when in my early 20s, where she would literally do okay, we're going to start the group with outside calisthenics. I'm like, wow, what a fun group. We're going to go outside and play a game.
Yeah.
And part of
it was mostly to try to deal with Marcus's energy so that we could have group time and actually get somewhere.
Because
well, it's not just Marcus. There was probably 4 people who were in the same
back
category.
then, I didn't understand the way that I could, with the ADD energy, influence a group. So it's just I'm just wild all the time. Which we're going to talk about kind of the pros and cons of things like this, where the con is I have a lot of energy. The pro is I can use it to help influence a group in a positive way, or I can steal a group, or I can derail an entire group. And so if you can learn to manage it well, there are both sides to that.
I love that.
And so really I learned it with being around Abby a lot. She's like, do you think that maybe it's not just...
Oh, I didn't know that you didn't know that before me.
No.
I thought you knew that your whole life.
I knew it I thought it, but it was never maybe I should actually see a professional about this.
Right.
So with Abby, she was like, do you ever think about talking to someone? So I went and I got diagnosed with ADD, and it helped me a lot, at least have way more compassion with myself. Because growing up, that behavior gets judged as you're just bad. Why can't you listen? What's wrong with you? Why don't you care? Or things I was the kid who I couldn't watch Power Rangers because then I'm going to try all the moves on my friends. So there was so much kind of trying to make me more idle or shut down a lot of the energy I had instead of helping me figure out how do I wield it better.
Yeah, that's a great example. Okay, Bryant, what is it like for you? Or what's your journey been?
It manifests differently as an adult and somebody who maybe, so as a kid in school, it would feel like I was in a straitjacket whenever I was forced to focus on something that I had no interest in focusing on. And so for math, for instance, I hated math, and you have to do your school. There's no getting out of it. And so when you just have to sit there and you're like, I can't get up out of my chair. And I was homeschooled too. So it wasn't even the classroom necessarily where, you go to school and then at a certain time you leave. Our parents were like, you don't get up until your school's done. You can't hang out with your friends until your school's done. Can't play. You have no freedom until your school is done, essentially. So it was I am literally trapped until I do this math that I can't focus on. And I would feel hot, prickles, my skin would get hot and I'd feel prickly, heat.
Yeah.
And I'd get claustrophobic and hyperventilate and just freak out.
Which you're having a ton of anxiety. You're having anxiety from being, that makes a lot of sense.
So being raised in a Christian home, it was he needs to learn self-control. He needs to learn how to, I'm not going to go too deep into that because my parents did the best they could with having a child like me. And it wasn't they were not awful with it, but a lot of it was blamed on maybe spiritual forces or you not having good self-control or being mature. And I would just panic. And so I was considered an angry kid growing up which none of my adult friends would consider me an angry person, except maybe my girlfriend when she watches me drive. But that's different, but in just life, I'm not angry. I don't get angry at people, but I would get angry because I felt so trapped and I couldn't do anything. I felt powerless about it, and I'd be freaking out. And then, I eventually would get some done. But what I ended up doing was figuring out a system to cheat all through high school. So I didn't actually have to do it. And I was like, this school's pointless. So I tell people I dropped out of high school because it's just easier. I don't want to go through the whole story, but no, I figured out a way to cheat, and I didn't do any school. I didn't learn anything from 9th grade to 12th. I didn't learn anything. Figured out a system to cheated all the way through, got my high school diploma. And so, but as an adult, it would show up whenever I would be faced with something where I have to focus on, like, hey, you have to do your taxes. Right. It's due tomorrow. And there'd just be like a panic that would come over. And so it would be easier to do things if I had a drink. Or if I, had a substance or something like, nicotine was, and actually it shows that nicotine does help you focus. The ways that people ingest nicotine are very, very harmful with like vaping, smoking, things like that. But even in like the Dr. Huberman podcast, talking about like having like a nicotine mint or a pouch 1 to 3 times a week can help boost receptors to where you're able to focus more.
Right. 1 to 3 times a week versus like multiple times a day.
Multiple times a day. Yeah. And not inhaling smoke, but because nicotine doesn't cause cancer. It's a highly addictive substance, but it's not a cancer causing substance. And so, yeah, as an adult, it would just flare up like that, where it was like, I couldn't focus on certain things. And so, but how it benefited me was I would seek jobs that I thought were fun. So it made me explore. I had like 35 different jobs between legal age to work to owning my own company.
It's crazy.
So all this crazy experience. And now it doesn't flare up a lot because things that I am not strong in, I can hire other people to do.
Right.
And I'm really good at delegating.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, as also being a good entrepreneur is learning how to delegate. And having ADHD, you have to learn to delegate or you go crazy. And so that's kind of how it's, affected my adult life. But I don't know how much you want me to go into because there's a whole bunch of stuff, but let's start.
Let's start there. Let's talk about what it was like to be kids for you. Because I think that you did a great job of describing what it was like actually in your body. I think I had a lot of anger as a kid as well. And I think that it was around this because one of the things with ADHD is having, feeling really strong impulsivity and having to keep that under control feels like a balloon that's blowing up, and then finally pops. So like there's a lot of impulsivity that you have to keep in check, even just to pay attention in a conversation that somebody's having, if you're not in a hyper-focused place. So there's definitely, I remember as a kid having lots of erratic emotions because of not being able to, because of the impulsivity and not being able to know how to regulate that. What was that like for you guys as kids?
I got in trouble a lot as being a bad listener, where it's like, I didn't care, or my parents would be like, are you listening to me? And I'm like, I am, but did you know there's a bird behind you in that window? Or did you also know that like, there's definitely an ice cream truck outside? But it wasn't that I didn't care about what they were saying. My brain was catching everything that was happening around us.
Yes. And
that made it even harder for me to, like, I could be trying my best to engage and really be caring. And there's a FedEx truck that just pulled up. Well, I wonder what they're delivering. Is it going to be a cool package? Is it for Bryant?
Right.
And it's not that I don't care. It's not that I don't like have a buy-in, but that was happening all the time.
It's a new thought pops in and it pops the old thoughts out.
One time, I think Abby and I were talking about this, and we were talking like, it's kind of like there's a club in my brain and the club only fits like 10 people. And so then now when the FedEx truck came, another person was added into my club. And so someone has to leave.
Yep.
And it's not because I don't care. It's just, there's only so much room for that in my brain.
Yeah.
And that for me was judged a lot as not caring, not listening, or, oh, well, you forgot this thing. Why did you forget that? It's because you don't care about what we're asking you to do.
Right.
And so that felt really hard because my intentions were really good.
Yeah. So you got blamed for like having bad intentions.
Yeah.
A lot. What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, to go off what Marcus said, I feel like you get good at acting the older you get because you got to pretend that you're focusing on people and paying attention and going, wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. And getting really good at watching things at the corner of your eye to pay attention to things. And because, everyone wants a good listener and everyone wants you to be, it's like, I can listen, but as soon as it's something that's super boring or not interesting, it's really hard to hyperfixate and focus on listening.
Yeah.
So you talked about impulsivity, and that's one of the hardest things with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, people with high impulsivity are a lot of criminals. Seriously,
they don't think of consequences.
They don't think, well, they act before they think through it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that happens before the age of 25 is you have a level of impulsivity, and then the frontal lobe connects and you start to think through consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there is a level of impulsivity with ADHD where it's like, I tell people it's my greatest strength, but it's also my greatest weakness, because you get an idea or a thought pops into your head and then you react to it.
Right.
So if you see somebody, the idea is observe what's going on, and it's impulsive. You're not thinking, well, how is that going to affect the person in front of me?
Totally.
It's just like squirrel. Yeah, you're always looking around, and so you can get in trouble a lot if and then I'm going to share this. I'm just share this story. You might bleep this out if it's too bad, but but this was years ago. I was 22 years old and I was driving, and this is how impulsivity would flare up. And I said I'm not an angry adult, and then I share the story, and you're like, you're a very angry adult. But it wasn't even out of anger. It was just like the idea popped into my head, and I acted on it. And thank God I had this. The girl I was dating stopped me, and I would have gone to jail. But we were driving down the road, and this car tried to swerve me off the road because I don't know why. Maybe I cut them off or something, but they tried to swerve me off the road, and they get in front of me and brake check me, and then they kept on driving. And so I was like, yeah, tit for tat. So I speed up, grab this metal flashlight and the cup holder, roll down the window,
and shine the light.
No, I was going to bash it through their window. And so, but it didn't even make, I was just like, I was like, you try to kill me? I try to kill you. So I grab a flashlight and I cock my hand back to throw it, and she grabs my arm, and I was like, what are you doing? And she goes, what are you doing? And someone throw it through the windshield.
Oh my God.
And it's like, that's a felony. And I was like, oh yeah, I could go to jail for that. And I didn't throw it to the windshield, but thank God, right? But I wasn't even thinking. It was just like, this person tried to kill me in their car. I'm going to ruin their car.
Right.
But as a kid, that kind of stuff would pop up where you'd get a consequence and you'd get angry at your parents or a sibling or something, and you would just react. And so, but the way it affected me positively is when you get an idea, you react to it. So you get an idea for a business, you get an idea for a product, you get an idea for a club, for a group, and you just go for it.
You don't think through all of the things that could go wrong. So you've actually started a lot more things in your life than a lot of people have, lived a lot more dreams, pursued a lot more things, created so much more, because you didn't let, I have to think through everything before I start.
Yeah, it's ready, fire, aim. But that also hurts a lot of people, because then you go, oh, I'm going to start this new club and this new idea. You get everybody excited about it, and then you're like, I don't really actually want to do that. So
one of the things for you with ADHD would be that you have a lot of ideas, and then you don't follow through on them. Yeah. Yeah. And then there's been a few ideas that I've obsessed over and they've become successful. Right. The biggest one being my company, the Adventure Challenge. Yeah. That was an impulsive, like, oh, I got this idea. This will be super fun. But then sometimes the idea clicks and you fall in love with it so much you can obsess over it. And with ADHD, it's not true that you can't focus on anything. It's you can't focus on things that you don't care about. And so that sounds really harsh, especially people think, well, you don't care about what I have to say. And it's like, well, there's moments I do and there's moments I don't. Totally. And so I care about you, but I also care about the FedEx truck that just drove by. And so yeah, it makes it really easy when you have an idea that you obsess, like you know is going to work, you fall in love with, you hyperfixate on that 18 hours, 24 hours a day, nothing else matters. And so that's why, I would say it's like my greatest strength and weakness is impulsivity, because it's hurt people around me, but it's also caused a lot of success. It's interesting because for me, so hyperfocus is a part of ADHD. I haven't found that it's necessarily always what I'm most interested in. Sometimes I'm just in a hyperfocus mood. So if it's something that I have to get done, if I'm in that mood, I can do more things. But we either are not focused at all or very, very obsessive. And that's also a reason that people with ADHD can be very successful. Because we can obsess about something. We can get to where we're thinking about something all the time and we're dreaming about it and we're coming up with ways to do it and figuring out ways around it. And I think that is It's been a huge part of success in all of our lives is the ability to go into hyper focus.
Yeah.
I know that for me with ADHD, I can forget a story in the middle of telling it. And this is one of the things that Justin hates the most.
Yeah, I mean, besides the fact that your hair's running against your coat right now, and when every time you move, and my brain is hyper focused on that. Like I'm over here on the technical end of stuff, kind of like watching everything go down, and I'm going into details. ADHD moment, but yeah, you will be midway into a story. I won't even say midway. It's a few like words into something, and then you just trail off and you're gone. And now I'm looping and trying to figure out what is it that she had to say, and should I keep my attention here? And that can start up and do that like, I don't know, dozens of times a day.
Yeah. So I like to say, as much as I can't listen to other people, I also can't talk myself. So it feels like it feels like a fair trade. And for me, like I often think what I'm saying is interesting. It's just when what I'm saying might be provoking a bunch of other thoughts, I can't talk and do that. And part of ADHD for me is multitasking. Sometimes I'm phenomenal at it. I can be taking care of 4 different subjects at the same time. Like at work, I can have 4 different people asking me questions, and I can be like delegating, do this, and I'm really good at holding the symphony. On the other hand, multitasking can sometimes be horrific if I'm trying to talk and wash the dishes, or I'm trying to explain something while watching a car drive by. So what has multitasking been like for you guys?
Sometimes it can be real hard. It depends on what's happening. Sometimes it feels fun because it's like, oh, I'm not just on this one task. I have this thing happening. I'm going to email this person. Then I'm going to write this email. Like it feels.
So sometimes it feels
nice.
fueling.
Yeah. It feels like
because
it's
of
the energy.
It's
to
like
bounce all around.
Yeah.
But in other times, if it's like I'm at dinner with Bree and this couple next to me is talking, I'm like, oh, I can't do both of those. Or we were hanging out the other day in the van, and there was 2 conversations, and Abby and I are in the middle, and we were like, I don't know what to do because there's 2 things happening. I don't know where to go, and I feel overwhelmed because I don't actually know how to get out of both scenarios.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it can feel really overwhelming for me.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of sensory issues in that way, where I can hear all kinds of conversations happening at the same time, and I kind of want to be in all of them. And sometimes it makes me panicky if I hear another conversation that I want to be in, but I am not in it. And then I'm having to try to remember what we're talking about.
Same.
Which is funny too, because I watch you, like when you're in that type of overwhelm, you completely hijack the entire group's conversation. You ask one singular question for everyone to individually answer one at a time to combat that. It's hysterical.
Yeah, I try to ask, this is what will happen. I will feel so overwhelmed by multiple conversations. I try to get everyone to talk about the same thing or just be in one dialogue. And then I also do what Bryant talked about earlier, which is I try to pick something that I think could be interesting to help me try to pay attention.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I will do that when it feels like I'm in a scenario with people that's like there's multiple things happening and I don't know what to do. Maybe not the same thing, but I'll try. How do I either pick a side and like, how do I get you guys to go over there? Like, can I actually separate these groups even farther?
I'll do that sometimes too, so the noise is less.
Yes. Or I can end up shutting down. Like it's like I just went like zombie mode because I felt so overwhelmed by the scenario.
Yeah, I've seen you do both, and I also do both. I will like be like, "Hey, let's go to that room over there and talk," because there's no way to pay attention.
Yeah.
What about you in multitasking?
I mean, I think I attempted it a lot, but I mean, like so many studies have shown that it's impossible to truly multitask, and so it's like, am I being effective with multitasking, or do I just feel like I'm being productive because I'm seeing little progress and a bunch of things happen at the same time? Versus you could have a lot of progress and one thing happen and the next. Because of that, I think the older I've gotten, the more I've been able to hyper focus on one objective at a time. Versus like, but it shows up maybe if I'm cleaning something, you know, I'm like, cleaning a bathroom, then I go to the living room and start cleaning, and then I go to this room, start cleaning, you know what I'm saying? Like I just meander, but that's only because I'm thinking, and it's easier to do lots of little things and not just one thing. I can't stand people who are like people who do puzzles. Like I don't freaking get a puzzle. Like it doesn't make sense to sit down and choose to torture yourself over fixating on one thing. Like maybe we all take Adderall together and then do a puzzle. That sounds like a party.
That's funny.
Can we? But I noticed taking Adderall, when I took Adderall, that I was able to hyperfixate on one thing at a time. And it was pleasurable to do that. Like your brain was like, this is fun.
Right.
And so, or drinking, the same, like when I was an editor, video editor, it was like I couldn't really edit until I got like 3 or 4 shots of whiskey in me, and then I could hyperfixate and focus on it.
Right.
And so for me now, I don't do a lot of multitasking unless it's subconscious and it's just something that's not important. But anything I'm pursuing or going after, it's like I'm very intentional to fixate on one thing at a time. But I guess in group settings, it is like sensory overload is weird.
Is that I've seen you before get like introverted in group settings. Do you think it's from being overstimulated? Yeah,
or there's just nothing interesting being talked about, and I just go into my own world and think about other stuff. But for the most part, it's just hard. I actually enjoy sitting in a group and multiple conversations going on, because then I can be a part of this conversation for a minute,
right?
And then as soon as it gets boring, I just kind of go over to this conversation. And then like we like I think a couple Sundays ago, all of us were hanging out at this girl's house, and we were all sitting in like a circle, and everyone was having their own different conversations, and I loved it. I just sat there and I was just like listening to this groups, and that feels good to me. So like I'm different than you in that way, like than everyone talking. I kind of like being able to bounce and not get trapped into one conversation.
That makes sense. I just want to talk about the irony of us recording this podcast, because Justin is doing so many things. The entire time he's like climbing around, unplugging mics, replugging them back in. He's moving my hair. Like I was thinking, this is the most ADD podcast recording for my brain that could happen.
Wrangling kittens.
Okay, let's talk about let's talk about fidget hacks. Do you guys have hacks that you do that help keep your attention span focused for something? Like I have a lot of, I watch videos on Facebook with no sound that is like decorating cookies or like painting a painting a lot of times when I'm talking to people, because it's just enough stimulation. Or going on walks is easier for me, or having some kind of thing that I can fidget with in my hands. Those kinds of things actually help with my nervous energy. Do you guys have fidgeting things?
I'm doing it right now with this
the cord.
mic cord. For sure, movement helps me. Like I can focus way better if I'm on a walk with someone or doing something that engages my body. I mean, we would have, because I did a group with Abby where she mentored some of us, and it was an internship group, and I knew if I don't run or do a workout before I go, I'm going to hijack the group. 100%. Not even because I have bad intentions, but because I have so much energy that if I don't do something to help it get out, I won't be able to focus. So even if I know, like I will think strategically, I have 5 meetings this day back to back, I have to go to the gym before that. Yeah. Because I won't be able to sit through them and actually focus and pay attention if I don't do something physical. So physical movement is a big one for me in that way.
That's actually really true. I remember asking you, could you run a few miles?
Sometimes I would be like, do you need to do some push-ups? And I'm like, what? Or like, do you need to go outside and do a block? And I'm like, oh, I mean, okay. Yeah. And I come back and I can sit still.
Yeah, it's very true. It's for you and how it displays for you. Physical energy is a huge part of it.
And even so, a lot of my job is doing Zoom meetings. And so I am just aware, like I'll play with my wedding ring, or I'm going to have a pen that I can play with. I have something in my hands that I am playing with that they can't see, but it helps me to have something else that's happening because there's energy that I can put somewhere.
Yeah. What about you, Bryant?
I mean, I fidget a lot. I bounce my knees up and down. Movement gets me in my body. I feel like I tap on myself a lot. But similar, walking keeps me engaged. Yeah. And so even if I'm doing like, especially if I'm doing like a coaching call with somebody and like I don't do FaceTime and I don't do Zoom.
So that you can walk.
So I can pace. And I told them that. They're like, oh, so when are we doing a Zoom? It's like, no, it's a phone call. And then some people are like, oh, that feels cheaper. I want to see your face. What's too bad? Like, do you want like me to very much be there for you and my brain to be working? Like,
Yes.
It's crazy because I lose everything that way. Because when I'm on a phone call, I'm walking in circles in my studio, and then I go to the bathroom, and then I go to the living room, and then I'm grabbing things and placing them things, and I'm not even aware of doing it.
Yes.
And then I'm like, why are the keys on top of the toilet? And it's just like I'm fidgeting, I'm grabbing stuff, and I'm unaware, but that helps me be able to fixate and focus.
Yeah.
And so, but even doing things that get me like present with my body, like ice bathing, which I think ice bathing and sauna is so awesome for that, because you can't be it's very hard to be in an ice bath until you've done it a lot, where you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I wonder what's going on here. I wonder you're in the ice bath and you're thinking, this hurts, I want to get out. And maybe you try to distract yourself by thinking of other things, but you're having to be aware of how you're feeling, what's going on, and you're very present in your body. And so even before this podcast, we all jumped in the ice bath, and that helps me feel like I'm in my body and able to be present. And focus.
Scientifically, ice baths release dopamine, epinephrine. Which one is it?
Well, they think
Norepinephrine,
which is adrenaline,
and dopamine. Actually, both of them.
Yeah. And that is chemicals that actually is very helpful for ADHD.
Well, that's what Adderall does. Adderall stimulates both of those things, and it helps you to hyperfixate.
They actually say that doing a cold plunge puts your brain in the same state as what Adderall does.
Yeah. So let's talking about Adderall. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Okay, my journey with Adderall.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have pretty strong opinions on Adderall, and I don't want anyone to feel any judgment for anyone who's put their kids on Adderall or been on Adderall themselves, because I understand that people are doing the best they know what to do with the information they have.
Yeah.
I was interviewing one person and he was like, yeah, I think it's child abuse to put your kids on Adderall. I'm like, that's really extreme, because parents, I genuinely think what's best for their kid.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, there's a lack of nuance to this conversation. It's like, well, my kid can't focus in school. And they're like, well, let's fix it by, firing off his dopamine receptors so he can hyperfixate on what we want him to focus on.
Yeah.
But then in the Christian world,
it changes your brain chemistry and affects your brain.
It does.
Long term, not just while you're on it.
I still have consequences from doing 18 months of Adderall. There's still consequences that I have in my life that I have. But what blows my mind is especially people in the church, I want my kid to change the world and be unique and different and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, when your kid starts to show that he is unique and different, then you try to stick him in a box. He's not doing school the same way every other kid is doing it. Let's pump his brain full of drugs. Yeah. And you have to look at like I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you look at the history of Adderall and why it was created.
I don't know anything about it.
Well, they originally was like, oh, this will cure depression because it's an amphetamine. It's going to boost your serotonin, your dopamine levels, make you feel happy. Yeah. And so they were using it for depression. They were using it for something else, weight loss. They'd use it for weight loss because it shuts your hunger down.
Yeah. I lost weight.
I lost weight too. And then they were like, you know what? I bet we could sell this to schools for kids who can't focus because it's boosting your dopamine receptors, and kids who can't focus, we put them on this. And then it's like this pharmaceutical industry pushing this drug to sell, to make a profit. And then all the psychologists and the doctors are prescribing it for kids to take so they can actually do school. So when you look at the history, there's a great documentary on Netflix. It's called Take Your Pills. And it goes over the history and the origins of Adderall. And it's not this conspiracy theorist like, the government's trying to control you. It's like, no, this is the history of the drug. It's not a plant. It did not exist. We created it. And this is what it was used for up until why it's used to now. And here's a journey following all of these people who have taken it over the last 30 years and their experience on it and the consequences they have with it now. Yeah. And so for me, I was raised in a Christian home, so it wasn't like, this could be a medical condition, or it could be your brain operates differently. Right. It's spiritual warfare, or this is, self-control, whatever. Yeah. And so going to a psychologist was never an option as a kid. Right. So I felt I was just crazy. And so and
the bummer thing is then your parents didn't also have tools for there are a lot of hacks that you can learn 100%. To help people with ADHD.
1,000%. Yeah. And, but yeah, so we didn't, have any of those tools. It was just, you're out of control, whatever. So as an adult, when people would start to tell me a lot of those symptoms sound like ADHD, you should go get checked out. I went to a psychologist and he was like, they did all these computer tests with me. And by the end of it, he said, your level of impulsivity is so high, you should be in prison. He said, you must have had really good parents. And I was like, I do have amazing parents. Yeah. But yeah, I should probably also be in prison. Try to throw a flashlight through a windshield once. I set things on fire as a kid. I did a lot of shit. So, but he was like, no, your level of impulsivity, you should be in prison. He's like, if you were my kid, I would make you take Adderall.
Wow.
And I was like, awesome, get me the stuff. And it was incredible. It helped me fixate and focus on certain things. However, they've also done studies that show you can't tap into creativity the same way you can off of it. And so people think they're being productive, and you are with information you already understand and know. But my company, my job is all creative. It's all creating concepts and ideating and all these things. So, brainstorming was one of my favorite things to do in creating original ideas and concepts. And then I would take an Adderall, and I couldn't access that part of my brain.
Yes.
And it's a very specific part of your brain where you go into and you're creating from nothing. It's it's a fun place to explore. On Adderall, I couldn't do that.
Oh yeah.
I could be quick and fire off a lot of information, but it wasn't actually creating something new. And so, but for me, the crazy thing about Adderall is it's Mother Nature's way of telling us that it's not natural. Like what comes up must come down. So you're spiking your dopamine, and there has to be a come down. And there is. And so they have supplements and drugs to take to help with the come down. And so for me, I would take Adderall, from 9 a.m. and, I would start to come down at 5. And so then I discovered that, a gin and tonic or two levels out the come down, and so it would be like, I would be high all day for work, and then I would drink, and then I'd have to keep drinking to keep that come down regulated. And then before bed, then take some THC, or some weed to help me fall asleep, because also with Adderall in your system, amphetamine in your system, it's hard to sleep. So it created this vicious cycle of taking Adderall, drinking alcohol, and then taking THC to help sleep. Yeah. And that was a vicious cycle. And then a few weeks of that, you hit this darkness to where your brain is just, the only pleasure you're feeling is when you're taking the drug. Yeah. Because when you're not on the drug, you feel an extreme low. And the only way to not want to kill yourself is to drink some alcohol to kind of mediate that feeling. Right. But then you also wake up crazy hungover when you take alcohol after having amphetamines. And so for me, I was like, well, I don't like this. This can't be a long-term solution. And I tried coming off of it multiple times, and I ended up just cutting it out cold turkey, which is very bad for your brain chemistry, because your brain is like, we're not producing any dopamine unless we have this drug. Right. And then you're like, I'm not taking the drug anymore. And your brain's like, okay, we're not producing any dopamine either.
Which, for those of you who aren't aware, dopamine is what helps us feel pleasure and feel good.
Pleasure, but motivation and drive and things like that. So it's the chemical that like pushes us to pursue the things that release pleasurable feelings. Yeah. And so when you have none of that, you have no motivation to create, to communicate, to do relationships, to do good things for your body. And so you're just in a dark pit of hell being tormented, and nothing's good. And when people say, oh, and this person broke up with me, I couldn't smell, I couldn't see color, and food didn't taste good. I'm like, bullshit. Try getting off of Adderall, after taking it for a year and seeing how you physically can't feel pleasure. Right. And so that was really hard for me. And then I went on the journey of going into learning about Adderall and what it actually was doing to your brain, because I'm like, I don't want anybody to go through this. The last thing I'll say on this is I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, done a lot of stupid shit. But I don't look back in my life and think, man, if I could go back in time, I would change that, because it's all part of my story and the things I get to contribute to the world. Yeah. I would 100% go back and change Adderall. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one thing. Well, there's two things in my life now, but that's one of them. Yeah. The other one is, I'm not going to say, but yeah, there's two. But that's the biggest one, because there's still consequences that I have. I have to be very conscious of my dopamine, very conscious of my mood and emotions and things, and being intentional with my brain chemistry, because it did screw a lot of that up. And this is what, 3 years out from taking Adderall. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I have noticed a lot. So it's very addictive, what people don't understand. And so putting a kid on it is subjecting them to have an addiction cycle for their whole life, where they learn the habits of addiction. And so that's where I feel like, again, you're not bad if you've done it. You were doing the best you could. It is painful for kids to have ADHD and not know what to do with it. It's hard to be an adult and help. Everyone is trying their best, but if I could choose, I would want my kid to not have to start the addiction pathway young. Everyone I know who's been on Adderall struggles with addiction to it. Like it sucks you in, unless you only take it like once a month or like once a week. But then one of the things you shared is it really makes my friends more bland. It makes them, so your business partner, I work with him, you work with him, Ben, if he takes an Adderall, we do get more done, but like, it's like almost like a zombie
Yeah.
person. It's the same way that I feel when my friends are having a hard time with something, is what people often feel like on Adderall. I remember when you went on Adderall, and I was pro you trying it.
Sure.
Because I saw
You and me.
how,
Marcus Miller.
thank you.
Yeah.
I am the you.
I'm looking at you, but I didn't say that. But like, I saw how much ADHD was hard for you. And
yeah.
obviously I wanted the pain to be relieved for you. So I was like, yeah, try it. And do you want to share what your experience was like?
Yeah. So similar to Bryant, in my family, you didn't see a counselor. So no one, or a psychiatrist or therapist, no one was going to diagnose me. And usually it was like, the hyperactive behavior was because you don't have yourself under control,
Right.
or you're not like focusing hard enough. Not maybe there are other
Like
factors.
you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. It was something about I'm
Your
not
intention.
caring versus, oh, maybe I just have a lot of energy and my brain works different and there are different things to try. So even like as we're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I was doing that. I was discovering loopholes as a kid. Like, okay, if I am fun enough, I could convince a teacher for us all to do class outside. Because if we're outside, I can like move a little bit. Or it's like, I probably was the kid who was like, I think I need to use the bathroom every day at 1:50 because if I can use the bathroom, then I get a break in this class.
Right.
And so I was doing things to help mitigate it.
Yes.
They were disruptive.
As you're an adult, I look back and think that's super strategic.
Totally.
That's amazing. You were problem solving.
Yeah. Even Abby, I was often trying to like, hey, do you think we should do our meeting in the backyard? Like I was often, but it's like looking back now, I can see I was trying to take care of this thing that I didn't understand and didn't know and help me with.
Mm-hmm.
And school does not set up a system to help with kids who have a more active system like that.
Yes.
And so when I found out that you could do, like, well, my mom actually has been on Adderall her whole life.
Yeah.
So I guess they always knew, but they just never told me about it.
Right.
But when I went to the psychiatrist, they were like, you absolutely have this, like you should be on, they give you like trials, so like try Adderall or Ritalin, or I can't remember which one it was. But I was like, sure, I'll try it. Why not? I'll give it a good go.
Yeah.
If I can focus, are you kidding me?
Totally.
You mean I can get work done? I can do
Yes.
details? Yes, please. And so they put me on it and I was trying it. And the crazy part is it works so well. Like there's that movie, I can't remember what it is, but there's a movie where all of a sudden their brain works like limitless. And I felt like I'm in limitless. Like there was a whole part of my brain that if I take this pill, it just like magically opens up or something.
Right.
Because the focus ability was so crazy. Like I could sit down and it's like, I have 6 hours. I'm going to do tasks for 6 hours and I can get it done and I can focus the whole time. Like it felt like wonderful in that way.
And you're like, is this what real people are like?
Yeah, I was like, no wonder you guys can study for school.
Totally.
If I could do this, I could study too.
Yeah.
But it, like Abby said, it totally numbed out my personality. I had just started doing consulting then in that transition, like around that time. And so for a while, I just thought maybe this job is making me depressed.
It's killing me.
Maybe I wasn't made to meet with people like this. Like I was trying to think through what are all the reasons that I was like this. It'd be like, I had no real personality during my meetings. I could focus really well. I could give really good feedback. My brain felt like it was working so well in helping understand people. But the personality part of me, the lively part of me, the fun, playful part of me was totally numbed out. And then I would just like watch TV with Justin after work every day.
Yeah.
Like I would go hang out and we'd just sit in silence and watch
Like
movies.
zombies.
Yeah.
Did you feel that calm down? The groggy, depressing, like sadness that would come after Adderall?
You know, I don't know if I would have said it then. Looking back now, I think I felt like, is this job making me depressed?
Yeah, because it felt like you were like, what is the point of it? Like he just became a shell of himself.
I was very, I felt numbed out as a human. Like it's like if like life had colors and then everything went to gray all of a sudden, you're like, oh,
yep,
life is gray now. Weird.
Yeah.
Now in gray, I can get a lot of things done. But I don't think I like that life is gray now.
Right.
And then we went on a trip, a group of us, and Abby was like, hey, did you just take your medicine? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, you should be aware. It feels like every time you take it, like you wake up in the morning and you're fun and you're playful and you feel like yourself. And then when you take it, it feels like Marcus disappears. And so that weekend, we all were kind of like, oh, it's just like be aware of what I'm like. Like everyone give me feedback. did I change? Do I feel different? I'm going to think about how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And after 3 or 4 days of with everyone in our group being aware, I was like, the medicine is actually what is getting rid of my personality. The medicine is the thing that's taking out the me part of me.
Yeah.
And so then I was just like, well, that's not worth it.
Yeah.
Like I've done enough like shortcuts in my own brain to make life happen. Like if I have to keep doing
Shortcuts.
if I have to build things into my life, like working out in the morning or cold plunging or going on walks,
Yep.
like I would rather put things in my life to help with this, my brain function the way it is, rather than the numbed out version of myself.
Yeah. And it screws with your reward system too.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, yes. Like it's almost like if someone came to you and said, hey, how about I give you $1 million, but you're not going to give a shit about it.
Right.
And you're not going to be happy about it. And you're going to, or I'll give you $10,000 and you're really going to care. Like it's a weird one because, you know, the highly ambitious, like, well, if I have the $1 million and people are going to think I'm successful, people are going to think I'm cool and whatever, but that doesn't stand to your own internal warfare.
Right.
So for me, it was like taking Adderall and going on that journey of addiction. I remember getting my first $100,000 check from my company, and it was a big buildup. I was so excited, $100,000, I'm be a big man now, I'm about some money, and I own the company, so I wrote the check to myself, like to Bryant Ellis, $100,000, and then I gave Ben his check, and then I was holding my check, and I just felt nothing, no pleasure, no excitement, it was just numb, and it was. I think I've shared this on the podcast too, on talking with Justin before, but. It was like it ruins your reward system. So it's just like you're not feeling even the pleasure of life. You're not feeling that you go and you pursue something, you achieve, and it's like, oh, that motivates me to keep pursuing more. So I see entrepreneurs get on Adderall to help them become successful, but they'll hit a level of success and then realize there's no point in the success because even the affirmation and praise from other people doesn't feel rewarding like it would normally.
Right.
And so you just lose all motivation for life. So it's like a short-term high for like a lifelong consequence of never being motivated again.
Right.
And then it's like, it's not worth it. Like, and that sucks, you know, and that took maybe a whole 1.5 years to get back that feeling of ambition again and motivation after I came off it.
Yeah.
It felt like it took a lot of the delight out of life for me. It's like that like the high of, I feel like the delight of getting to live, of what life feels like, or like the feeling for me. Often I feel like when I feel the sun and it like is on my face and I can feel what that like, oh, life has purpose and hope and goodness involved. That high feeling was gone.
Yeah. I think one of the hard things is that you had a very dramatic response that you could feel. A lot of people I know, it's much more like Marcus. I was pointing to Bryant. I guess I should say that on the podcast, where you knew how it was affecting you. You felt the low, so you understood it. But a lot of times when people get on medication, they don't realize if it's a slow personality transition. Like that happened with my mom. She got on meds and it was a slow personality transition. So I never knew it was the meds that changed her personality. I never knew that that's what had happened, that had made her depressed, that she'd lost her joy of life, that she started over talking all the time. I had no idea until she got off all the meds. And then you found out, oh, there's a human again. And I had forgotten that you existed. And so I think, again, I am a big fan of moderation also. I think anything you do in extremism can be really hard. So if you're going to use ADHD medication, I just recommend you use it in extreme moderation so that you're managing and knowing yourself if you have addictive cycles. One thing I will say, for me, a lot of life hacks help. And then also something is trauma is a huge part of ADHD. And so in seasons where I'm processing through trauma, it's like trauma takes up, if we go back to the club example where my brain can only hold 10 people, trauma might take up 5 of my people. So now thoughts come in and out so much faster because of that, and it becomes much more heightened. So you can actually I really recommend somatic experiencing therapy, learning how to balance your nervous system. I have found that most of that fidgety, crazy energy that I've had for a lot of my life, as I've worked on balancing my nervous system, that has helped me much more. It doesn't mean that all my ADHD symptoms go away. There's a doctor named Dr. Minsa who works with physical imbalances that create ADHD. I have not done the program and had it work, so I don't know if it works, but there are other natural ways for people out there listening. If you are like, what is hopeful? I know that like GABA is a supplement that's supposed to be really helpful for what? GABA. Yeah. Is a supplement that's supposed to be really helpful. So I would just encourage, there's a lot of life hacks that you can do to make your life great, even with ADHD. So I'd encourage you to find like the things that bring you alive and that can help you instead of just finding a way to medicate.
Yeah.
For you, do you want to talk about also like getting off of, because I know you mentioned alcohol in the beginning of how it felt like it helped you, but ultimately now you would say that's not, it didn't ultimately help you.
With the alcohol?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, it was just, you're taking something that's just, you're ruining your, dopamine receptors, and you do anything you can to feel something again.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, in the time it was helping me.
Yeah.
Well, I thought so. Obviously, alcohol is not actually going to help you, So I don't know. What's your question?
Well, that was it. I mean, you brought up how great alcohol felt for your ADHD before. So I was like, you maybe should say how it's not.
No, I mean, like, yeah, obviously, when I say it helped with the ADHD, it was like, yeah, it's short. You're thinking short term. Yeah. You're like, I'm going to sacrifice my future success, my future health, and my body and my mind for this moment. And like, why do you need to achieve this right now? Why do you need to edit this video? Why do you need to, well, it's my job. It's like, well, find a new job. And I'm sorry, that sounds really harsh. And people are like, I have a family.
Sure.
But I would say this, anyone who has ADHD, there is like an invitation to dive inward and explore, how did God make me to function?
Yes.
What does he want me to fixate and focus on?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not working for this asshole.
Right.
Maybe it's not going to and getting this degree and this thing that your parents pressured you into going and getting. It's an invitation to become really self-aware and to like, what sounds like fun to pursue? Because, and back in the day, you had to have people with ADHD. You know what I'm saying? You had to, for hunters, or, people who are out hunting, you can't have just fixated on one thing. They hear a noise and they're stimulated by it. Like they're very, and so like, but in today's society, one of my favorite quotes is, if you grade a goldfish's ability to climb a tree, you're always going to think that it's stupid.
Yeah.
So
good.
Like the monkeys climb the trees, not the goldfish. And in today's society, we're trying to fit everybody into a box of how you're supposed to function. And so you think if you're not academically inclined or academically intelligent, you're stupid. And it's like, I have a lot of really academically intelligent people who work for me.
Yeah.
And you think you don't go to college if you're not, there's all these things. If I'm not good at this, then this means I'm bad here. If I can't do this, if I can't work the typical 9 to 5, I could never hold a job.
Right.
I could never hold a job because I'd get so bored and be so crazy and I'd go crazy. And I'm like, it was a constant journey of exploring. Now I understand that being a single person with no kids gives me a lot more freedom to explore.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's very harder once you have a family.
Totally.
But I'm saying like for those of you who have the opportunity to not explore with pumping your system full of drugs, to force yourself to do something that you don't really have to do.
Right.
It's an invitation to go on the journey now to start figuring out like, how did God create me to function? How was I created to actually pursue certain things? And I think it's a beautiful journey that you get to go on. And I think most successful friends I have ADHD.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you could be a creative genius and you don't know it.
Yeah.
You think you're really stupid, but you're actually a creative genius who's not doing good in school. And there's countless of people in history who were like that, who had ADHD and they were deemed stupid and, because you didn't test well in our system. And so, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably how I found my pathway. I found my pathway before I knew I had ADHD. But when I look back on my story, I can be like, oh, I found something that I am always interested in.
Yeah.
Like I found something that does occupy interest for me, which is people and how they work and what their stories are and how the dots connect in people's lives. Like I'm just genuinely always curious about that. And it helped me. Like that's how I picked a pathway, was like, what could I focus on more than just 1 hour? And that enabled me to find something that I was very passionate about. So I love the charge for people to do that. We have just a few seconds left, but let's ask Justin what it's like to be friends with 3 people with ADHD.
Obviously I've been sitting silent over here because I didn't have a mic. So I'm just kind of sitting in the background, letting it unfold. And I think that sometimes being in relationship with multiple people with ADHD is like sitting silent, like I was, where there is an active movement of exchange that's happening all around me. And there's moments of, I don't want to sound dramatic. There's moments of real presence that happens that is exchanging, but there's also such flutter and disconnection and almost like mini moments of feeling abandoned. Like, where did they all go? I'm like all alone here in this space. And so it can vacillate between, because the energy that people like say the three people besides me in this room, the energy that you guys bring is phenomenal. It's like wonderful. It's magical when you guys are engaging some of your ADHD expressions, because it can make for fun, adventurous, wild moments that actually like break you out of the mundane, detail oriented things. And then it can also at the same time create a sense of, I feel so out of control. There's no clarity. Details can't be tackled inside of this space. It feels sometimes like in marriage, I feel like I'm sometimes taking care of a sinking ship, like a ship that's sinking at all times, because like there is no capacity to hone in on details in certain ways for certain moments. And I'm like scrambling to make up for that. And I think that, I don't know. I don't know a lot of other people. Like I have, considering how many friends and primary attachments that I have that have freaking ADHD. Like, I don't know if anyone has this experience that I'm having. Like you might have one spouse or one best friend, but I don't know. Is the rest of the world like this? I don't know. But I can imagine that other people in those situations could feel really misunderstood, like overlooked, and then misunderstood and feeling overlooked or not heard or just unseen and things like that. That can happen a lot of times, especially because like, you know, I can feel, I'll use an example, like Bryant, you'll go into your boredom look, but I know it's part of ADHD, but also like it can feel like he doesn't care. And then Abby and I can be in conversation, and then all of a sudden she's fluttering on her phone or off talking about something else. And Marcus does it too at times.
His eyes shift, Marcus's. That's what I noticed.
That actually does
we'll be serving and I'll be talking and you're like,
that gets me in trouble. I feel like I will look like, no, look them in the eyes.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm like, they're saying something. You should look in their eyes.
What's hysterical is that there'll be like an engagement and then a sudden disengagement. And you're like, okay, how do I get a need met inside of this situation and not personalize something and be like, they just don't care about me. Because I think for years in marriage, I didn't understand between the dyslexia and the ADHD. I actually didn't understand that it was that there was stuff chemically and other things going on. I was just like, oh, she just really does not care about me. I will show up and I will be present and I will engage in the moments where she's needing engagement. And then when I'm doing it, all of a sudden she's off on a million different tangents. And I think it helped me to redefine, like, as I understood, oh, there's dyslexia. Oh, there's actually ADHD. This isn't about me. It helped a lot, but it was really painful. And I think probably a lot of people out there don't really know. I'm in relationship with someone with ADHD, and I've been taking this all as a personalization situation when it's really not that. And it's also not a character issue. Like I'm sitting here listening as Marcus is talking about his childhood and Brian's talking about his, you know, there's a lot of things that were chalked up to, oh, this is character issues. This is rebellion. This is that you don't care or whatever, which would be incredibly painful to always have your intentions defined in that way of like, oh, you actually don't care. You're just trying to be a jackass or whatever. But I look at it and I go, okay, I have so much compassion for you, that being defined. And then I have compassion for people on the other side who are just sitting there being like, yeah, I'm experiencing this. And it's like, I don't know what to do with my feelings often. Historically, I haven't known what to do with my feelings when it felt like it was deliberate or uncaring. But then I didn't know what to do with my feelings when it's like, oh, this is like part of their makeup. They're not trying to do this. And so I can't just solve this because it's not a character thing. It's like, you can't fully correct something that's not a character issue. So I don't know. That's some of what I feel.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a dynamic that my wife and I hit a lot. So it is the balance of I'm not bad for having ADHD, and also she's not bad for being affected by it, and we get to in love meet each other. So because she used to get triggered all the time.
Oh yeah,
she'd be like, Marcus doesn't care about me. He's not listening. I was telling him this story at dinner, and then he just totally looked the other way because this person walked through the door and the bell rang, and she just felt like he must really not care about what I have to say. And we were meeting with a counselor, and we would go back and forth talking through, and she would help re-understand this isn't actually about whether or not he cares about you. He has something else happening over here. And my wife has her own triggers about not feeling like her voice matters. So she got to work through that. I also got to work through, there are things I can do. Like, I'm just not going to sit in a seat where I look at the door. I'm not going to sit in a seat where there's a TV in the background. I'm not going to sit in a seat at a restaurant where I see every person walking by. Because even in my best efforts, if I'm looking at you in the eyes, but then there's someone walking by with a shiny shirt, I'm going to like totally follow them with my eyes. And so I'm aware I'm going to do things to purposefully love you. And she's let go of some of the personal pain around it. And so I was telling Abby earlier, Brie will just like start snapping fingers. Hello, I'm over here. Can you see me? Can you see me?
Like making lots of
like she'll like do funny sounds and like smile really big. And it like totally, I'm back in.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for helping me. It's kind of like she's just like, I'm going to be like a rod and help you redirect back in. Not in a, I'm mad at you, but like playfully engage. Because I know you're not doing that to hurt me. Also, here I am.
Yeah.
One of the things that I realized, let me back up. First off, that was really good that you're also looking for ways to deliberately engage course correction instead of just being like, well, I have ADHD. Eat it, Bree. You're like, okay, like I know that this is difficult for other people and I'm not bad for it. And I can try and figure out course correction that would help it, like lessen it. I think that I was having this funny moment earlier when this conversation was happening because I was like, my dad, I guarantee, has ADHD, which is something I've clearly thought out before in the past. But I was like, oh my gosh, I had my dad, and then I had my wife, and then I had my best friends. I was like, I think I need to go work on childhood wounding about this issue coming up inside of me. But I was kind of laughing to myself, and I was like, oh, I think that if my dad, like even again, knowing about it, I think if people discover it and have the diagnosis, like I think if my dad actually truly knew about it and they could have a conversation with him about it, that there could have been like mini course corrections that like, oh, actually, Bob, this is probably what would help you manage this better. And I think that there's so many people that deal with this that don't actually know how to manage it well. And like you guys said, there's a whole generation being thrown on drugs, and that's losing a whole part of themselves even in the process, where there's actually like, is there an alternative that we can live drug free with this and have our personalities thriving and the people around us having reasonable experiences and accommodating with grace and understanding what you're going through.
Yeah. I have a lot of empathy for people who have to live with ADHD. I think the more I've learned about it, learning gives you power because then I can acknowledge what things would affect other people and why it affects them. When I didn't know I had ADHD, I was just lost in my own world of ping-ponging and having anxiety in my body and having reactions that I didn't want to have. I think about impulsivity. God, it helped me so much to learn about ADHD and impulsivity because sometimes in a meeting, I will say something like as a quick reaction without having thought through it. And I used to beat myself up so much for it. So my point, I got distracted in my own story, but my point was that the more I've learned about it, the more I can take ownership over what to do with it. And so it's easier to say, like, if Justin's like, hey, you're telling me a story and you just disappeared. Now I can be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You're right. And it enables you to understand people and move towards people more. I know with like Marcus, I had a conversation once where I was like, sometimes I share things with you and then you just sit there in silence, staring off in the distance. And I have no idea what just happened and where that's going. And so I feel like I do this with ADHD friends. I tell them, like I have another friend who I often will share meaningful things and they will just get on their phone right after I'm done and not respond. And so I don't feel powerless to friends having ADHD. I'm not like, well, that's just your ADHD. I'm like, hey, that actually affected me.
Totally.
But because of we both acknowledge that they have it, it's easier to make it not about intention. It's easier to be like, hey, I feel a little misunderstood, or I feel like you just checked out on me, or I feel like what I shared mattered to me and it doesn't feel like it mattered to you. How do we meet here?
Yeah.
Totally. Even with what Abby's saying there, like we had that conversation and then I was able to say, oh, honestly, you said that. And I had 10 different thoughts that popped into my head about 10 different things that in my head are related to that. And I'm actually trying to figure out, how do I respond to what you're sharing? Because I care about what you're sharing. But I just had all these thoughts thrown in my head and I'm trying to figure out what actually matters or doesn't matter in this scenario.
Yeah. Which when I understood that helped me feel much more loved. And also then I could still be like, hey, you're doing that thing where you're not saying anything. And he could be like, oh, well, here's some thoughts.
Yeah, here are the thoughts I had.
Yeah.
I just couldn't figure out which one was the right one in the scenario.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
No, I just like the call to action to be powerful and become self-aware and learn ways to stay connected to people and not be a little victim. And I hate it on TikTok, but like, I have ADHD, so you love me with this or get out of my life. And then it's like, well, I have no friends, because it's like, no, you learn to adapt. You become self-aware. You go and practice exercises and things to help you stay present and learn. And yeah, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to show up differently than other people do, but not be a victim to your world and then blame, your lack of friends or your lack of keeping a job or your lack of happiness because you have this disorder. I kind of think it's a superpower, but that's a whole different conversation, So I like what you guys are saying about, being powerful and learning ways to connect and to stay present and communicate to people around you that you love. So they,
Yeah. It's both that we need to be powerful with ADHD, and the people around us need to be powerful so that both people can have needs and understand each other.
Yeah.
I love you, Justin. I'm sorry you had to sit here for this madness. This was a delightful thing. Bryant ordered Chick-fil-A in the middle of this.
Well, I was like, I really want a chicken sandwich. So,
my favorite was we all thought he was taking notes, because note taking is something we all do with ADHD, so we don't forget our thoughts.
And I knew you were going to think I was taking notes, and I was like, I bet I could order a chicken sandwich right now and nobody would know. And it's at the doorstep. I'm just waiting for this podcast to be done so I can eat the sandwich.
I can tell you're ready to be done to eat that. So on that note, we're going to let him out of his misery, his ADHD hell, and say goodbye to all of you guys. Make sure that you share this. Send this to all the people that have ADHD that you want to poke at, or to all the people that if you have ADHD, to all of your family and friends, so that they understand your world a little bit more. And if you have kids with ADHD, I just recommend diving into learning as much as you can. What kinds of ways can you help them through physicality, through somatic stuff? What kinds of life hacks can you teach them? There's a lot of information out there. So be powerful. We like you all. Okay, bye.